In the General Plan 2030 document provided back in 2011, it is stated on the very first page that the content is provided by a group called ICF International. On their own website, they state, in 2011, we formalized our commitment by joining the United Nations Global Compact, the world's largest global corporate sustainability initiative. Can anybody on the board speak to how this group was selected to be the arbiter of what is just and best for the lands and peoples of Vista? Is there any way for the city of Vista to prove it is acting in the best interests of its citizenry and not the corporations providing the frameworks which this city will seem to abide by prior to and after 2030? That's just the first one. In the table of contents for the same document, it details how the ICLEI, the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, was consulted for further adjudication of land use and targeted capital investments for Vista. Can anyone on the board detail how this decision was made for the members of the public in layman's terms? It is worth noting that ICLEI, that's how you would abbreviate it, another conglomerate comprised of corporate representatives, also states on their own websites that their organization is contractually aligned and obligated to the goals of various subsets of the United Nations. Is it incorrect to state that our general plan for 2030 is a direct copy of plans created by the United Nations in 1992 with their creation of Agenda 21? If not, can there be a workshop or some future date where this is explained in full for the benefit of the public? In recognition of the fact that these organizations are comprised of high-ranking corporate officials representing various entities, is there a way the board today can promise that shareholder returns and profit margins will not take higher precedent than the projected well-being of the citizens of Vista? There's already a long documented history of companies like SDG&E using predatory practices to enact transfers of wealth from the people to the corporation's pockets. How can we be assured by the board that the same scenario will not take place over the course of implementing a plan that is apparently devised by multiple corporations hiding behind these international groups that are not elected by the citizens of this city nor the ones around us? And I mentioned those around us because, as I mentioned, and you can all compare even the logo that he showed you all, same graphic used for San Diego, same graphic used for San Francisco, same graphic used for San Bernardino. Compare it to the one in Illinois.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. We will include this in the staff's comments. Commissioner Grimm, did you have a comment on the general plan?
Well, yeah, I did.
Okay.
Traditionally, it's awful hard to get. I guess what this gentleman's talking about too is your average citizen, whatever that means, to come to these workshop type meetings. A lot of times, at least it's been my experience, that the people that come are representative of organized groups in town, the Chamber of Commerce or whatever it might be. I was just kind of wondering how you felt, and the reach out for staff is very hard to bring. How do you bring a guy that gets home from work or a woman that gets home from work, got 2 kids, and say, okay, you need to come out to a general plan workshop? So the fear was always, are the people that you really want to get to coming to these workshops? And I kind of wanted to get a feel for you, if you think your outreach was successful. Did people come out that you thought were, and again, I hate to say average, residents, but people that, have everyday concerns? I just kind of wanted your feel on how that worked in terms of who you got to the meeting.
So I think the discussion that took place was very successful. I think the interaction that we received from the community and the engagement that we had provided us a lot of information. Would I have liked to see more people participate in the event? 100%. We estimate about 80 people in 4 nights showed up to our outreach. We're committed to try to get that message out even more than we did the last event. At the Strawberry Festival, we passed out some surveys based on some of the information that we received in the first outreach, just to try to get some information from the public, get a email address in order to be able to get that information out to them, get these invites out and get in front of people so they know there's opportunity out there to participate. Again, throughout summer, there's quite a few community events, festivals and so forth within the city that we're going to try to get out there, have our presence out there, get our information and our invites out there. So hopefully we can increase the attendance of those events. However, the information that we gathered is definitely an asset to this project. And however, we'd like to see more people participate in order to make this a successful process.
I know at the McClellan Center, we had a very good discussion at my table on the issues, and I thought it was interesting that there are some very common themes through the 4 districts that you found in the public hearing or the public process.
I can't believe you allowed Mr. Rosser to be able to participate in it.
I was
That
actually,
was Mr. Rosser, it wasn't Chairman Rosser.
I was actually at his table, and not once he identified himself as a planning commissioner. He was just a community member, so it really allowed the flow of communication, I guess you'd say. But yeah, it was a fun event. It was nice getting people out and listening to some of the history out there, some of the people that have had spent time here. A lot of stories that I wasn't aware of. I've only been employed here for about 8 years now, so it was nice to hear the history and understand the vantage point of these community members. So it was a fun event and really a great opportunity for me being a part of this project.
Commissioner Looney?
Thank you. I wanted to come back to what our speaker touched on. And the information that he's given on this handout is accurate, and it's true. And I recently had to take my exams to keep my license current. And what is in this page is watered down to what was in my exam. The policies that the states and the cities have to adhere to are by design, but all of the building regulations by 2035 and by 2050, the feedback that we got is really good, but we're not going to be able to do it as a city. The restrictions that I have to abide by on new buildings, no one's going to want to hear. And no, that information isn't going to be made public for the most part. And the handful of people, the wealthy people, are making decisions for the globe. So I'm stuck, and I'm really frustrated because we've got people in other levels are making decisions for the city of Vista, and our hands are tied because we can't do anything about it. So it's going to be a brave new world, but it's going to be a very different world. And the buildings are going to change significantly. The transportation modes are going to change significantly, whether we like it or not. So yeah, it's great to see that, yeah, we want less dense towns and less dense cities, and to preserve, the natural settings of Vista. We're going to be able to do that in very small segments. I mean, maybe half-acre parcels, but it's going to change. And so this is all good, it's all input, but one of the other things that the feedback showed me is that many of the citizens aren't informed of what we have to make decisions on, predicated by the state and federal government. So it's, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.